Steve, it's September 1st. Last week we were joking about pumpkin spice, and then this week it warmed up. What am I supposed to do? I think this is Michigan. This is how Michigan works. We got some amazing things happening today on the show. First up, we're going to tell you all about the 3M lawsuit. Not so much the legal side of it, because that's not what we talk about here. It's the medtech side of it. What is up? Where's FDA in all of this? $6 billion later of lawsuits that 3M is subjected to. How does the FDA fit into this? How do medical devices relate to this? And after that, I am going to be joined live by David Weaver, who is a veteran of our startup ecosystem, a founder of some amazing organizations, an angel investor in his own right. We're going to be talking all about what do angel investors ask for? Yeah, in theory, you go out there and get money, but what are they asking for? What do they expect? Board seats? They want to see proof of concept? What kinds of things are they looking for? David is going to demystify all of that for us. Both of those things coming up next on MedTech Crossroads. FDA and the 3M earplug lawsuits, a $6 billion hit to 3M. But what role does the FDA play in all of this? After all, we're talking about human health here, right? This hearing loss involved, this military earplugs, and if we show it here on the iPad, 3M acquired a company called Arrow, really interesting name there, Arrow. You see the word ear right in the middle of that. There we go, Arrow. And they make these, they're now a division of 3M. They make these earplugs, these two-sided earplugs. Well, they did. They're not on the market anymore because leading up to this, hundreds of lawsuits accusing hearing loss in military personnel, tens of thousands of these sold to the military, now a $6 billion settlement where 3M is going to pay out $6 billion. I think it was $5 billion in cash and $1 billion in shares to those who have been hurt by this. And the question really comes up, what happened here? And we are not here to say that we have a firm clue. I mean, obviously this is up to the courts to decide. But what happened? Let's go all the way back. How are these things regulated? If you go to ANSI, American National Standards Institute, you will read this really interesting article. And it says, in 1974, ANSI S3.19-1974, there's a technique for measuring hearing protectors. 1974. A technique for calculating the noise reduction rating. You see that NRR on every single package of hearing protectors you pass in the store? Well, it turns out this has long since been superseded. There's a new ANSI standard out that replaced it over 30 years ago. But the 1974 standard, if we look right here, it's had several successors, but the EPA, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, still requires the testing to the 1974 standard. And it includes a method using 10 human subjects, which I thought was really interesting. Like, it's not a completely objective test either. And it's still required under 40 CFR Part 211. So this is still how these things are tested. And then you see the ANSI label on the package in the store, and you feel confident that these things are going to protect your hearing. Well, it turns out it gets a little bit complicated because if we go back here, these 3M Arrow hearing protectors, the Combat Arms version 2 hearing protectors, the accusations that came out, and apparently the jury ruled in favor of the accusers here, they were accusing all sorts of things like falsifying test results. They were saying that tests were fudged. They were saying that they got a -2 decibel result out of the hearing protectors. -2 in this case would mean, let's see, if 20 means we're protecting your hearing, we're going to go to our audio engineer and we're going to say, Steve, what would -2 mean if 20 is protecting your hearing for 20 decibels? That means they're making things louder. Yeah, it actually makes it look like they amplify, but they didn't report that apparently as a -2. They reported it as a 0. And this was a perk because they were trying to say that these things would allow you to hear voices around you, but they'd shut off really, really loud sounds. And apparently this was not happening. So the fact of the case, you can read about anywhere. You can go to the docket. We've got that linked in the YouTube description. You can find out all the legal and technical details. But here's where I wanted to focus today. What about FDA? We're talking about human health. We're talking about hearing loss after all. Doesn't FDA get involved in this? And this is a really fascinating deep dive because what we saw a moment ago is EPA seems to be regulating hearing protectors in the US, and they're regulating hearing protectors based on a 1974 standard. And that's all fine and good. But if we look here, they are unclassified by FDA. They're unclassified. They've actually been given a product code, EWD. But FDA hasn't said, are these class 1? Are they class 2? Are they class 3? And the submission type, get this, sometimes people are looking for this for their products, is enforcement discretion. The submission type is enforcement discretion, which basically says FDA is saying, yes, this would count as a medical device, but we are choosing to ignore it. We are choosing to look the other way. Now, we know that they do things like health and wellness devices like that. Yeah, we could take this measuring exercise bicycle and we could call it a medical device, and we're not giving up that authority. We're just going to exercise enforcement discretion. And that's how it is with hearing aids. Or, sorry, not hearing aids, hearing protectors. They're exercising enforcement discretion, therefore the product is unclassified with FDA. It turns out that it's not GMP exempt. Good manufacturing practices are still considered to be required. Well, but if you're exercising enforcement discretion, when are you ever going to check that, FDA? And the answer is they're not. They're not going to check that. There's no 510K to be submitted. There's no registration should technically be required, but once again, enforcement discretion. We're just not going to check in on this. We're going to leave it to the EPA and this 1974 standard. Now, mind you, I'm not judging this. I'm not saying this is the right thing or the wrong thing. That will be something that pundits can argue about all the time. In fact, I've had discussions with friends who say, well, how often do these things go wrong? We've talked about deregulation with FDA in other contexts. Another one that we did on the show was radio frequency ID tags. Radio frequency ID tags not getting tested to the current level in certain products where a 510K wasn't required anymore. So no one checked in. It wouldn't have been a hard thing. No one bothered to check in and say, are you using the right standard? Are you complying with it? The company self-certified, off they went, and 300 adverse events and injuries were reported. So deregulation is kind of a mixed bag. You're making it easier for companies to get products on the market, and that is an objectively good thing. But when we see these things slip through, where if somebody had just been checking test reports, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. Again, we're not taking a position on that. That is for others to argue about. But it is fascinating that FDA is waiving their oversight of hearing protectors, leaving it to a 1974 standard and the Environmental Protection Agency to regulate. But it's not the case that people don't register these devices. Names as prominent as Etymotic Research, Strand Industries, which makes the well-known Eargasm earplugs, Honeywell Safety Products, even Uline, the commercial industrial supply house, they're all registered with FDA for hearing protectors as manufacturers, contract manufacturers, specification developers, repackagers, relabelers. So it's not that people aren't going to FDA and saying, I know this is enforcement discretion. Hey, just wanted to let you know, we know we're making what amounts to a medical device, and we're going to register with you. There are people out there doing it. Would that have solved problems in this case? Who's to say? We're not gonna judge that. But this is the question that I think is really, really interesting. Hearing protectors we think of them as just these little foam plugs that stick in your ear. Not so the Combat Arms version 2 devices from Aero and 3M. Relatively complex. the triple baffled design on two ends. One end designed to completely block sound off. The other design intended to let some sound through. So relatively complex design. And we might say to ourselves, well, these things over here, these hearing protectors, they wouldn't need a 510K. They don't need anybody auditing that. Foam is foam. But of course, when you make something that's this complex, it does have the potential to fail. Would it have been more appropriate to have these reviewed? How do you judge that? Things get lumped into categories. Again, we can't judge. But we do find it very, very interesting, and you can read the docket about all the failures that happen, the testing failures, the testing changes, the deviations from testing protocol that happened. Unfortunately for quite a few military servicemen and women, permanent hearing loss or tinnitus that has resulted from this, $6 billion in counting in damages to 3M. What can we learn as a medtech development community? Well, it's that sometimes just a little bit of oversight isn't a terrible thing. Somebody to at least check the work. I think one of the tensions we see in our community is that sometimes FDA seems to be staring at the head of the pin, asking questions that don't matter. But other times, if we could all just follow a process that makes sure we're testing to the most current standards, everyone would be better off. It's that balance in regulation that's always so hard to hit. And when we talk on this show so often about the design control process and the verification and validation that comes along with medical product development, that's why those things are important, so that you can at least show, hey, look, we tried to address this issue, and this issue, and that's why we're putting this product on the market. We believe it to be safe and effective. If you found this interesting, please be sure to like and subscribe. That's what we hope on MedTech Crossroads, that the things that we provide to you for free will save you time and effort and headaches on your MedTech development journey. Angel investors and syndication. What size rounds will angel investors do? What do angel investors ask for? Will they ask for preferred stock? Will they take common stock? Do angel investors take board seats, or do they sit happily by while you run your board how you want to? How much equity do angel investors take? Do they need to see a proof of concept before they're willing to jump in and invest? What do angel investors look for? I'm joined today by David Weaver, who's the President Emeritus for Cityside Ventures in Birmingham, Michigan. Cityside manages the Birmingham Angels Network and an early-stage $10 million Great Lakes Angels Fund. I've known David for years. He's been connecting high-net-worth investors with early-stage technology companies and screening high-quality deals since 2002 as the president of the first formal angel group in Michigan. He's also sought funding for 2 Michigan startups as CEO. David also served as fund manager and executive in residence at the Pittsburgh Life Science Greenhouse. And he is a founding member of the Michigan Venture Capital Association, now a legendary organization here, and a charter member of the Angel Capital Association. David, the list goes on, but thank you for being here with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for the honor.
Well, you and I have known each other for years, and we've talked about all sorts of these things in the past, but today we're going to try to put it all together in one place. Because I think as you experience in your side of the business, as we get into being experience on ours, people have a lot of misconceptions about what people in our parts of the industries do. And then they come with all sorts of ideas that just don't make any sense, and a lot of misconceptions. So let's start right here with this first thing that we brought up, angel investors and syndication. Syndication is a term that I think people who are familiar with VCs, venture capitalists, sometimes hear about, but we're never quite sure what to make about angels. Is this a person sitting in their living room saying, I have some extra money I want to invest? Is this a dinner club of people saying, we'll all go in together as part of one deal? When you put the word syndication and angels together for me, I paused and I went, David, tell us more.
Well, break it down, angels into 3 different categories. Individuals, so not belong to an organization, but find a deal they'd like to invest in. That's one group. Then there's members organizations like Birmingham Angels, where people belong to an organization that helps select the deals for them, help them with the documentation to get deals done, screen them, and all that stuff. Then there's funds, angel funds, which an investor can put money into the fund and be in 30, 40 deals over the life of the fund, but at the early stage, unlike VCs, which come in normally for growth capital after a lot of the market adoption is in place. They need money to grow the market presence and get them ready for an acquisition or an exit. So angels are in early if they're individuals or in a group or part of an angel fund. They're looking for an equity position, early stage company. Most often, at least ourselves and others, like companies that are at the pre-seed or seed round of capital raising. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to raise after your family and friends have kind of tapped out for what you can do in a way of getting some capital to get started and move into the company full time, you're trying to raise $500,000 to 1 million, 2 million. You now need angels. You're too early and too small for VCs to mess around with. This is the space where angels like. They like this space. But if you're raising around 500 or more, no group likely is going to do it by themselves.
Mm.
A fund is going to want to necessarily do it by themselves. So you have to think about syndication from the beginning. That means that you need to know that other angels and groups or in whatever sector they're in are going to want to have other people come in the deal. So if you're raising like $2 million and you're looking for somebody to get it started, a lot of people don't like to take the lead on something that large because they're worried about you spending 9 months trying to close around and spending their money doing the running around and not putting it into the company operating it.
Because if you don't close that, they turn out to be sort of the only investors, even though it was supposed to be.
And they don't want to be on so early that it takes a long time to get a second investor in it. And so if somebody's going to take the lead, most likely they have an idea who they're going to syndicate with. They'll get close to the end of the round as soon as possible because they want you to execute, stop chasing the money, get all the money you can, and close the round and execute. So the idea is don't go to one or two angel groups when you're trying to raise money and think, okay, I'm good. I'll just wait to hear back from those folks. Go to everybody you think that would be in your sector that would invest in you, whether the in-state or out-of-state, and be prepared with a slide deck at least to get started with. It really gives a full story. A lot of people put together a slide deck that talks about the technology, but they don't really talk about the business. They don't talk about how strong the management team is. They don't talk about their IP. They don't talk about the go-to-market strategy, the use of proceeds and exit strategy and stuff like that. Angels are in a company because they want to be out of a company, like VCs. They go in to get out. So they really want to know how you're going to raise enough money to be attracted to be acquired, IPO, which is not likely. And so they want to know what your plan is to get there, how soon you get market traction to be on the radar for folks. Now, the equity position that angels take is unlike VCs. Normally, when VCs come in, they take board seats and they do syndicate. If you're raising a $10, $20 million round, they normally don't take it by themselves. They bring other people in to spread the risk. Also, have people that come in the next round beyond themselves and not do everything by themselves. And so angels like to also have other people in the deal, but we're not after major equity and board seats necessarily. If you're raising a $1 million round and somebody wants to put together a syndication or a group says we'll take 250, they could ask for a board seat. You probably ought to give up a board seat. They come at that level because they'll bring a lot of value added on top of the money. And you need outside people in the company to help give you a horizon of what to think about that you're not thinking as just being an insider. So the amount of equity depends on how much you're raising. If it's say it's $4 million round, you're raising 1 million, you're giving away 1/4 of the company. So post, it's going to be 5 million. So there's post and pre-money is what people talk about. So you need to think about that when you're raising the money, how much you're willing to give up. So, but they're not after, they don't go into a deal thinking, well, I want to have at least 30% of the company. They, how much you offer versus what the size is what they get.
Mm.
That's what they're going after. They don't
Angels,
look to see, I'm not going to do unless I at least have 50% of the company. That's not going to happen.
angels
We
definitely.
actually don't want to have 50% of the company. We want the founders to have a large stake in it. So they're driven to make this
Mm.
successful.
Mm. And they don't usually see themselves, angels don't usually see themselves as contributing sort of the lion's share of the funds per se. They see themselves as boosting this and getting it to the next level.
Yeah, we look at our group at least looks at companies that would most likely have an exit, an acquisition with 3 to 5 years. So that gives them enough. We want them to be either, we'll look at companies pre-revenue. A lot of groups won't do that. They want you to have revenue first, almost acting like a VC.
Mm.
We'll look at pre-revenue companies, but they have to be close to revenue. They have to have proof of concept done, so we know there's market validation that the service or product would be bought. Now they have one together plan that within the next 12, 18 months max, they would start having some revenue coming into the company, and we believe we can count on that. Um, we know it always takes longer. It takes more money than people expect. So kind of build that into the expectation of how much we're going to fund them and how long we think they're going to take versus the milestones that the company thinks they're going to take.
Often we've found that people, if they come asking for either too much or too little, it's a turnoff to an investor because it's like if you come asking for too much, well, I want you to be more focused. And if you come asking for
And
too little, it's like you don't understand what you're in for.
yeah, we've had some companies saying, well, we only need 500K and we'll get to this milestone, and then we'll go and ask for some more. That milestone is not going to be enough to raise the next round. Why don't you just make it 1 million?
Mm.
We're trying to grab more equity, but we're saying you need more money, you get more proof to show value added when you go to raise the next round of money.
Because we don't want to be having that conversation 6 months down the road as to what else needs to happen now. David, I want to take you really back really quick to the question of syndication. So with
Yeah.
VCs, I think it's a very common concept. What you said with angels is if I need maybe less than 500,000, maybe I'm going to an angel. Maybe if I need 2 million, I might need to syndicate angels. Take me through how, as a startup founder, how do I know whether I should be trying to get angels together to syndicate? Who should be leading that? How would I know if that was likely to happen? Or at what point do I sort of go, no, I know my next raise is going to be, 2.25 million. I'm just going to jump and go straight to VC. Like how does one know which pond one is swimming in as those numbers get bigger?
Yeah, we anything 2 million or less is really in the space for angels. Like I said earlier, I wouldn't go to VCs. You'd get their attention only if you want to educate them about what you're doing for the future, but not to raise money from them. So if you think you're going to need 15 or 20 million much later in your life cycle, then it's good to have some VCs and know what you're doing, kind of see whether you're reaching your milestones or not. But um, we syndication could start even at 500K.
Mm,
If we decide we're going to come in and come in at 500K, we're not going to take the whole round by ourselves, even if we had the cash. We would maybe take 100 or 200 of it and syndicate the rest of it. What does that mean? That means if we're in it, if the investors, it behooves them to know about other individuals or angel groups that they could bring this deal to on behalf of the company with the company's support and to make introductions for them to take over the deal. Like some companies have come to us recently, raise some money. I've gone to Point Angels. I've gone to Angels in Traverse City. Northern Michigan Angels have gone to Grand Angels and said, listen, here's the deal we're taking a lead on. We'd like you to take a look at it as well. So that's us doing the syndication. But the company shouldn't wait only for the investors to syndicate. They should say, well, I know a group over in Toledo, or I know a group in Cleveland that I've got an introduction to. Should I approach them? Hell yes. You want to have a lot of hooks in the water. You don't know which fish is going to bite and for how much. But you do want to make sure it's coordinated so the people that are in the deal already know who else you're talking to. You might say, oh, I know some folks in Cleveland too. Tell me who you know, and we could share due diligence and stuff with them. So
So it's not really,
That's
there's no strict rule of, oh, the angel leads the syndication or the company leads the syndication. It's really have the conversations. If you introduce an idea to some other investor, you're kind of going, make your own decisions. But then if it just sort of naturally emerges, you guys might be the ones to suggest syndicating to the company.
right, right.
That's fascinating. And again, something we often hear with respect to VCs, but something that the angels do. And I love the hard numbers there of less than 2 million. Let's think angel, more than 2 million. Let's think VC, which answers the size of the rounds question. I also like what you said, David, about like the equity, that angels aren't in it for how do I get as much of a percentage of this company as possible. Um, you also talked to us about board seats, that it's not necessarily the goal of it. Although I imagine as an angel, you would take a board seat based on the specifics if it made sense.
Yeah, we've had some investors that have had asked to have, will oftentimes ask to have a non-voting board member from our group be on their board committee meetings when they have them. And then sometimes that relationship grows into such that the company says, listen, this person's really contributing a lot. We like to add them as a board member. And sometimes, depending on the size of the investment, we might insist a board seat is part of the investment. Um, it plays different ways, but we do like to have knowledge of what's going on in the company.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, this is a question I know a lot of people are wondering about, but preferred shares versus common stock, how does this work? And as you get into these term sheets and stuff, it's like your head, if you're new to this, can swim as to, I didn't realize there were so many ways to take equity in a company. Tell us about that.
Yeah, founders start a company with all the shares being common stock. And if there's later stock options offered at some point in the company, normally after they're a C Corp, it would be out of the common shares. Um, if angels come into a deal um, and they know there's going to be later rounds, most likely they would insist on having preferred shares. The reason is when there's other money coming in, especially if there's VCs and you're common and not preferred, you don't have voting rights and the ability to negotiate like a VC does with some of the things that happen to the company later as far as fundraising and other activities. So you want to have preferred shares, especially if VCs are going to come in later or you believe they're going to come in. We typically ask for preferred shares at the get-go, even if there's no later rounds, because you never know what's going on. Now, the type of investments are both. There's a vehicle called SAFE, which we find has come out of the West Coast. It's for future. It's a securities for future equity type of thing. It's a promissory. Um, Founders like this because it really doesn't affect their cap table. Um, Angels, we do not touch them because it's not a securitized investment. It doesn't show up on their cap table as debt. We like either convertible debt, which means we agree with the founders. We don't know what the value of the company is, so we'll ride with them on what the company's going to be at the time of conversion, because there will be a conversion date if you take convertible debt, either 2 or 3 years later, it'll convert at a certain discount to the future round. Normally, it's like 20%, maybe 6 or 8% interest during that period of time. That it's a note or price shares. So there's three different ways: safes, convertible debt, and price shares. Price shares mean you're doing $4 million round and you're raising $1 million. That's price. You know immediately what your equity holding is on that. Convertible debt, you don't know until it converts what it is at a later date.
That's really interesting. I've heard people talk about the safes, and I got the impression, it sounds like you're sort of confirming that a safe is a little bit of a, if an investor wants to give money to a startup and they don't want to quite make it a grant, but they're not really worried about protecting their interests, they can sort of do a safe just to make it easy. Is that oversimplifying it?
Well, that's a good analogy of what it is. You're giving the company the money of the company with a expectation that they'll pay you back at a later date with, and even there's discounts and conversions on that. But it's it's not securitized. If the company goes under and you have some IP, if you're in there as a debt holder or a price to equity holder in the company, you have some rights to whatever the value of the company is if the company dies. If you're a safe holder and that you've lost it, your money's gone.
So a safe holder's really saying, I'm in it for the upside, but if it doesn't go well, I'm not even going to try to I'm sort of just not even going to try to cut my losses.
Well, I understand the risk, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Well, people are always interested. What do I need? When should I approach an angel? What do I need to approach an angel? What do they expect me to know? If my company's an LLC, is it still okay if I go to angels? Do I need a proof of concept? What kinds of documents do I need to go to that? Like, I don't have a clue. I just want money. Like, what do I need?
Right, right. Uh, Almost every company starts out as an LLC, and that's fine with us. Probably over 80% of our companies are LLCs, and some have been around, 3 years already plus. Um, we LLCs are favorable to angels in one way that most of the companies are still in R&D, so there's R&D tax credits that can benefit the investors. If it's an LLC, um, but LLCs need to have, for us to invest in, at least one or more full-time employees in the company. Some people say, I'd like to raise $500,000. As soon as we do, I'm going to join the company. I'm sorry.
That's an
If
interesting
you're
one.
not in the company already, we're not funding you to get into the company. We will fund the company to operate, but not you to join the company.
You're bringing a vehicle
Um,
that is running, and you're saying, here's how I want to keep it going. You're not bringing something and saying, I want to start the vehicle.
right. Right. We
Mm.
won't fund that. I don't know too many people that do. So we'd like to see at least one or more full-time employees in it. And because it's a startup, whether it's LLC or C Corp, um, there's no history of sales in most cases. So how do you put the value on your investment in that company when you're looking at it to figure what they're going to do and how much money you're going to put at risk in the company? So we believe that probably close to 6% of the decision on a company is based on the founder and the founding management team. They have to be strong drivers.
Mm.
If they don't have real strong experience in the domain they want to enter with their business model, and they're not really committed to this, um, and have a good knowledge about the market during the Q&A and stuff we have with them, we're going to take a pass, even if it's a very attractive round, very attractive product. We got to believe they're going to be able to execute. Execution where a lot of companies fall down. They raise money, have some good talent, but they don't know how they're going to go to the market and execute. So we got to believe the management team is very, very strong. Um, and unit forecasts, when somebody's doing a unit forecast and a dollar forecast, um, we want to get into their head and figure out how they, when they first start having sales, whether it's a product or service, who are their first customers, how long is it going to take to get them, how they're going to get there. They should know that in a lot of detail, quarter by quarter or month by month, at least for the first year. And after that, we know it gets to be more and more fiction. It's not realistic, even at 5 years, to know what's going on. But we want to see that somebody's thought it out beyond year one. Let's say I've got my first year, I expect to have contact with 750 buying clients, buying at the following rate, and it scales over time. Not everybody starts at the same level. So my second year, I expect to see that same 750 plus another 1,000 on top of that, scattered over each quarter to get to this revenue stream. So you have to have some kind of logic that we can follow, that you're really building those numbers based on a real process as you run through your head, rather than think, well, I'm going to do 20% better the next year. No, we want to know how you build it, just not what the percent increase is.
Because the investor is investing in something. It's not just a product. It's not just an idea. It's an actual vehicle moving towards a destination. And if you can't say what that destination is, and we find that in our business too, of development, medical product development, is like, if you can't tell us what your goal is and overarchingly what you want to accomplish, we can only help accelerate you. We can't completely invent your market and your product and everything else for you from the get-go. I just want to mention to our live listening audience, if you have any questions for David, you're welcome to punch them in, those on YouTube and those on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, you can punch it into the chat or raise your hand. On YouTube, there's a chat there too if you have any questions for David about angel investing. And David, in
On
terms
that
of,
same topic, before you move
yeah,
on,
go
I
ahead,
mean,
please.
we like to see, we have our own platform. We ask companies to get on and ask a whole lot of questions. Some people get on our platform the first time, they go, Jesus, you're asking too many questions. This is it takes like a couple hours to fill this out. Well, you know why we ask all those questions? Because if we like a company, we want to move quickly on due diligence. We save a lot of time if you put all the information in our platform early. We're not going to have to chase you down and say, well, listen, I need to know about your operating agreement. I need to know about it. So I can't get to it until next week. Well, then, we just wasted a lot of time. So we like to be able to close on funding if we're going to do it within 60 days from the time you present to our angel investors. And having all the information collected allows us to make that happen with our due diligence team, what you provide us. So we want to know when you put your pro forma together for 5 years, when do you think you're going to be at break even? That's important to us. We like to know when you're stop chasing new money. You can go to the bank and raise the money.
And
stop diluting us.
And yeah, right. Well, that I think is the thing, and it's one of the things that I think sometimes the VCs actually find themselves in a slightly harder place in, because they have a hard time distinguishing themselves sometimes from investment bankers, right? And so you guys are really taking that risk. You're really upfront. You're taking that risk. This is like Wild West investing at its finest. But I think your point about coming, if you're going to invest, you're going to do it now. You're not going to wait because you're looking at that exit. You said earlier that you go in to get out. I loved that term. I've never heard that in all these years, David. That's an awesome way to succinctly put it.
It's true. We're in the tech space. The technology doesn't sit on its hands. If you don't get in the market and take a presence and start scaling, a year later, somebody else is going to be there and you're behind. So if you got a great idea, we want you to have the money, get out there and get a presence. So you're the one that dominates the market, makes it attractive for buying your customer base and buying your product or service. Okay, so move quickly. We don't want to drag our feet. We don't want you to either.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I got one more documentation question, then we're going to go back to, I want to talk a little bit about the distinctions between VCs and angels, and also post-investment follow-up. Like we haven't even talked, we were only talking about how do you get angel investment, but what happens afterwards. I think that's the care and feeding of your team is a really important question. But pre-investment, going to angels, are there documents, a startup CEO should be bringing, term sheets, offering documents? Are these things that you help with? Are they things that they come with? How does that work?
Well, I've seen the model changing. When I was raising money in 2010 for a startup, I put together a 2-page executive summary and a slide deck. Now I'm seeing that Andrew groups like ourselves are just happy with a slide deck to get our attention. And then we'll dig our teeth into that with more information with our own platform or Q&A and stuff like that. So documents, we want to see a well thought out slide deck that covers the most important points that we want to know and need to know what those are. I have a document that I could forward to anybody who wants to know what a slide deck should have in it for raising money from angel investors. When you come to us, we want you to have that well thought out. We want you to understand that we will be asking for an equity position. We will be really your partners, just not investors. When you get money into your company, we are now your partner in your company. So we want to be treated like that. If you have problems that come up, don't hide them from us. Tell us about it so we can help you with it. So it doesn't become a gotcha. Oh, damn, I wish I told you about that. Let us get to it early with you to help you. We're not there to criticize you. We're there to help you. Oftentimes, we're available to be advisors to the company as needed. We've got a lot of talent. We've got engineers, we've got CFOs, we've got lawyers, we've got all kinds of talent in our pool of investors that can help you. Also with opening doors to help you get into new clients and stuff like that. We want to help you. We have a vested interest in your success. So we're not there to beat you up. We're there to help you.
Yeah, it's interesting. People often have an almost adversarial approach to it, and that never leads to good things. I brought up on the iPad. Maybe there's another address you'd like me to punch in, David. But just in terms of how people should get in touch with you, I know your association with CitysideVentures.com, which I have the website there up on the iPad. Any other contact information you'd like people to have as we go into our final few questions?
Well, yeah, a lot of people know where to go to find angels. And Spark in Ann Arbor has a list of all the angel groups in Michigan. But beyond that, there's a nationwide directory, and it's www.angelcapitalassociation, three words connected.org with a / directory, where you just go to their website and find it. They list angel groups that are part of that organization. They're nationwide and even overseas. When I joined it, it was a national organization. Now it's international. Angel groups all over the world, and you really want to go to an angel group that understands your space. Look and see if they have a portfolio of companies similar to what you're doing, because they'll get it. If you bring a life science company to somebody that just does SaaS, and you're not a SaaS life science company, you're going to get a deaf ear. They're not going to really spend time with you. So do your research, find out what they're looking for, look at portfolio companies, look and see what the methods are for approaching them. The best way to get to an angel is really a referral. We see companies come to us all the time across the transom. We'll take a look at them, but it's different if another angel group sends us a deal. Hey, we we took a look at this company. It doesn't fit us, but we really like it. You should take a look at. Or here's somebody approached us, and we send them to you as well.
Those warm
We're still taking
introductions
a look at them.
are key. Even a warm introduction that comes from somebody who says, I'm not going to invest, but this person over here might be interested.
Yeah.
And here we've got up on the iPad, if Steve can show it here, the angelcapitalassociation.org. I believe we've got the right website up here. Let's see if we can pop that up. What's that? Oh, he's not getting my screen. Well, we have technical difficulties.
No, I don't see that, but that's okay.
We'll see if that comes up. But
The other viewers can see it.
angelcapitalassociation.org, the ACA member directory. We'll punch that link into the YouTube description after the show, so people can get to that and to Cityside Ventures. No, that's a great connection to make. Let's talk for just a moment, David, about angels and VCs, because you said something to me interesting before the show. You said we're seeing a lot of deals where we invest as angels and it never goes to VC. And I think if somebody were narrating the typical process, it's like, well, go as far as you can without equity investing, do all the grants you can, and then take equity investing late. And then you're going to go to VCs, and pretty soon you won't own your company. And oh, wait, is that how it works? But you were telling me, no, there's situations where it never goes VC and you make exit with angels.
Yeah, when I started this in 2002, a lot of the companies were raising capital. Said from the business school, they were told to write a business plan, executive summary, and a slide deck, and we'll talk to the VCs about raising some money. And quickly learned that if they're raising $2 million or less, even $3 million or less, VCs say, "Well, that's not us. We don't touch anything that small. We look only deals in $10 or $20 million." They go, "Where do we go?" The angels. That's why I formed the angel group that I did, so that there was a platform for people to connect to each other. Now, the difference between the VCs and angels is we're not providing growth capital. We're really providing true seed capital to get the company solid with its customer base, it's building its management team, and getting initial sales in the marketplace. That's our goal. We want you to build enough of your team and outsource as much as you can rather than hire a lot of people. There's some people who do outsource software development rather than hire somebody full time to do it. And then you've got to develop. Now, what do you do with them? He's on your payroll. Think about how you build your management team. How much can you outsource? And then we like companies that are going to be flexible. We've had a number of companies that have come to us, start out. We really like them. We like the founder. They found out they kind of stalled with the product idea placement they had, and they pivoted. And we put some more money into because the pivot they went to is much stronger than our initial expectations of the company. So be flexible, get back, stay in touch with the marketplace, be willing to pivot, be solid. Well, I don't know why this isn't working. It's really good. Listen, if it's not working, it's not really good. You need to find out from the marketplace what you need to do and whether you're the right people to do it.
It's interesting
Um,
how when we talk about like trends, what are trends? How do I think about this? What are patterns that I should see? We almost sometimes forget that the whole reason new ideas are being put out there is because it's never quite been done that way before, and we're trying to find something that doesn't exist. So it's like you can learn all you want, but if you're not paying attention to the data as it comes back, we're missing something.
exactly, exactly.
Well, what
So
happens, David? What happens after? So I've gone through all of this. I've courted angel groups. Maybe they syndicated together. They invested fast because they don't want to wait for that exit. They want it. They went in to get out, which I love. How do I take care of my investors? How do I keep my investors happy? You
yeah,
talked about some of it, which is I want to know if you're having problems because maybe I can make a recommendation. What else?
yeah. I think the best way to take care of your investors is have a forced discipline. Once a quarter, put together a newsletter to all your investors, recapping what you told them you were going to do in the last communication for that quarter, how you did against it, what you're going to do for the next quarter, what milestones that means, and how that's going to hopefully change the valuation of the company because they want to see inflection points of raising the value. And then put together a P&L so they understand where your cash position is. Let them know what your current burn rate is, how long that money is going to last you. Is it going to last you 12 months, 18 months, your money in hand, or the next raise, what that's going to do. Do that every quarter so they have a track record. If this company is paying attention to its investors, it's keeping us informed. And if you didn't make your milestones the last quarter, you're explaining that in the next newsletter. What slipped? What happened? Because Murphy's out there. Stuff is going to happen. You didn't twist it. It may not be your fault, but we want to know that you've recognized it and doing something about it and told us about it. Don't keep it hidden. So I think quarterly reports generated from the company to the investors is the best way to deal with investors. Don't wait for them to ask you. Uh, it really shows that put your heads above the other people that are not doing that. They're not thinking about their investors that way. They got the money, and we'll tell you once in a while what's going on and send you updates. Well, formal newsletter is much better.
It's really a faithful stewardship of what you've been given. Recognize that you're holding this in trust and give reports on it.
Yes.
That's huge. One last question for you, David. We were talking the other week with a venture capitalist and talking about what's happening in the market right now. I think you alluded earlier to the fact that as VC markets are going down, so too angel markets. Any specific trends you'd like to call our attention to, or things? What are you seeing? What kinds of deals do you say, wow, I'd really like to see more of these? What kind do you go, wow, that's really stagnated? Any trends you
Yeah.
want to tip towards?
Well, as far as the funding side of it go, we're seeing VCs, large VCs, and private equity funds um, kind of nurturing their current portfolio, not really to expand on it much. We're seeing some of the hype for green energy is diminished. It's not as strong as it was before. And I won't get into the reasons. I think that's part of that, but that market's kind of lost its luster for being a great opportunity for investment.
Mm,
Um, so the ramifications are for angels. There's a discipline now to be very cautious as to the true valuation of the company when you come to us. If you're raising like $3 million or $2 million and you think you're a 15 or $20 million company for the value of the company at the time of the raise, you better have strong reasons why that is the common thing in that market segment. Every market segment is different as far as the valuation goes. But I don't see companies coming to us raising $2 million saying they're going to be more than $8 or $10 million valuation right now. And sometimes less than that, depending on how long it's going to take them to get to market how much more money they're going to need. We do find companies, as you mentioned before, coming to us. Like one we just invested last month is only $1 million, maybe $1.25 million round. We're taking a lead on, and we think this company will be acquired in less than 18 months. Um, we'd love to see a company will flip, and maybe be a 10x or more return for our investors, because we think this is really a hot company. That's unusual, but we do like companies that know they are in it to grow it and be out within 3 to 5 years, and have a way to make that happen. And they've had some early discussions with people, maybe potential acquirers. Just listen, here's the space we're in. I know you've done some stuff with Google or whoever it was before, Apple or Amazon, and we're in this space. We think this might be of interest to you. Would you like to follow us? Not asking them for money, but they go, oh, geez, maybe we should get these guys on a radar. And you start showing traction in the marketplace. Hey, we'd like to talk to you some more.
Because once you hear about
And
something and you see a trend forming, it's like, okay, hold on, maybe time to get on board.
And like this company we just invested in, some of the people that supply product like they have in the marketplace, already approached them. We'd like to know when you're in the market, because we'd like to talk to you. So I want to take them to a place where we have a bidding war, where we have a number of people wanting that company, just not one or two.
And
so it drives up the value.
That's the way I think a lot of big exits in our own space have happened. Is you get to that place and it's like, I got 2 or 3 companies that are saying, hey, I need this technology, I need this product, and that's when they really the exits you hear about. That's how they tend to come to be.
Yeah, normally when you get close to an exit, you do want to be in a C corp, which brings different levels of funding and responsibility. And you put together a board. Now they have fiduciary responsibility. Need to have D&O insurance. Need to have liability insurance if you haven't had already when you went in the marketplace. Now, some companies I mentioned earlier, that they have a really strong technology person that's key in the company, whether it's a CEO or a CTO, and they can't afford to lose that person. And I never thought about doing a key man policy. Why would I do a key man policy? $500,000 or $1 million on this person. Why? Because that person, if they get set up in a hospital, an accident, or die, you've got to replace them. You can't let the company just go down. And where's the money going to be to do that with? You don't want to take that out of the equity you have in the company. And investors like see that they're butt covered too, that you've got somebody that you have money to raise and find good talent, and bring them in to keep this company going. So think about key man policy early on. If you got somebody that's really, really strong and crucial to the success of the company, early when it's cheap.
The fact that you bring the key man policy up sort of doubles down on the fact that you brought up earlier, and I've heard many investors talk about, which is we're actually investing in your team. And sometimes I think people think, oh, well, that's just feel good. Like you're trying to show me that you care about people, but really all you care about is your return. And what you're kind of saying is, no, those people are very central to my return. Like you can't actually separate these two things. These are we can't discard the people. It's simply not a thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, David, today has been just so much fun. I'm not seeing any questions here on Zoom or YouTube, but any last thoughts you want to leave us with when somebody's thinking about taking angel investment? Leave us with the last 30 seconds here. How do you want them to think about it?
Recognize that this is going to be your livelihood for the next 5 years or longer, and you have to be committed with your family that this is going to take a lot of hours and weekends. It's not a 9 to 5 job, and you have to be there, be available to support your team and support the investors and travel when necessary. And look outside the local area for investors. Don't be afraid to have contacts on either coast, West Coast or East Coast. Sometimes they move faster, understand some of the things that are missing in the audience, a very conservative audience here in the Midwest. So be dedicated and be convincing when you have a chance to meet somebody. And like I say in an elevator pitch, have your idea concept down to 1 or 2 minutes so you can really get to the gut of it with somebody. If you happen to bump into somebody that's interested, get their attention to do more. So be prepared and understand this is a journey. It's going to take some time, and you have to be really dedicated along with your family.
Well, that's awesome. David Weaver, always good to talk to you, sir. Just so much knowledge and so much experience in our ecosystem. Thanks for all that you've built.
My pleasure. Thank you, Gene.
Always great to talk with David. Next up, we're going to give you a really quick view of the upcoming events right before the top of the hour here. Upcoming events in our local and national ecosystem. I see we got another. Actually, you know what? We're going to do it since it's here. What David was talking about earlier, the ACA member directory. We did manage to get it up here. You can see that angelcapitalassociation.org/directory. If you're looking for angels, find them right there. Upcoming events in the local and national ecosystem. Celebrate Invention, September 14th, 3 to 6 p.m. as a part of the A2 Tech 360 week coming right up. Resi Boston, that deadline has passed for the pitch challenge, but if you're a small company or you're an investor, another place you can go to find investors is Resi in Boston, September 18th through 20th. The 2023 Michigan Life Sciences Showcase, September 18th in Lansing, Michigan. A lot of different things happening there, not just medical devices. And last I checked, they were looking for pharma posters. If you have drug discovery that you're doing and you want to present a poster, last I checked, I didn't check it this week, but last week they were still looking for posters. The A2 Biosocial is back to Paleo on the Rooftop. It was an amazing event about a month or two ago. The last one, I shouldn't say the last one. Reuniting after summer break. Paleo Rooftop, Wednesday, September 20th. See you at Paleo. The MedTech Conference in Anaheim, California, October 9th through 11th. And the Startup Symposium, October 25th and 26th in Houston, Texas, put on by Project MedTech. Let me tell you just a minute. I was in Cleveland earlier. Let's see, today is Friday. It was earlier this week. Dwayne Mancini and company put on an amazing conference in Cleveland, Project MedTech. We were there with about 278 attendees, very, very well attended, many names that everybody knows. And it was a great day of presentations on a whole bunch of ecosystem topics. So congratulations to Project MedTech on that very, very successful event, and hopefully another great one coming up in October in Houston. October 8th through 10th, the Eye and the Chip 2023, Dr. Hesberg and company, looking at synthetic vision at the Southfield West End Hotel. The AFTO RAPS Collaborative, the takeover of the old Xavier conferences, by all appearances, they're doing a great job of taking over where Xavier left off. Cincinnati, Ohio, November 14th through 16th, the AI Summit. And then the Clinical Trials and Regulation of Medical Devices Conference, 20th through 21st of November in Orlando, Florida. Followed in November by the Combination Products Summit, again, AFTO RAPS, Fort Worth, Texas, November 28th through 30th, co-sponsored by the FDA. That's about it for today. Contact at medtechcrossroads.com. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Go out there and like the videos. It's been amazing what's been happening. We're still getting live viewers. We love having our live audience there. It's just so encouraging that you're there with us every week. Thank you so much. And the YouTube views are taking off like crazy. It's just been really exciting to see that. We're hovering right around 1,000 views a day, which blows my mind. So thank you for being here live and in YouTube views. Keep the questions coming. Let us know what topics you're interested in. We keep doing interviews for community members. We talk about hot national news like we did today with the 3M earplugs and its relation to the medtech development community, as well as educational topics. And we'll continue to come back to those. Hey, if you're doing medtech development, you want to de-risk it. How do you do that? You can always find our 510K series or our de-risking series or, about 155 other episodes of us talking about the medtech ecosystem. Thanks for joining us on MedTech Crossroads. We'll see you next week.